Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing.
Good evening. I am Kim. I work with Kelsey over in water conservation. She is on a well-deserved vacation this week, so she is leaving it up to us to do. Okay. But she wrote me something. For those attending in person, please silence your cell phones. For all attendees, remember that all upcoming events for Fort Worth Water are hosted on savefortworthwater.org. For all upcoming events hosted by TRWD, you can visit savetarrantwater.com. This class will hopefully be streamed live on Facebook and uploaded in its entirety to the Fort Worth Water YouTube channel, so you don't want to miss a thing. Our speaker tonight is David Cole. Has worked at Texas Agriculture for over 20 years in a variety of fields, including organic farming, sustainable agricultural training, landscape horticulture, landscape irrigation, urban farming and community gardening, livestock and forage production, and prairie restoration. David is currently coordinator 2 and adjunct faculty for the horticultural program at Tarrant County College Northwest Campus and has been at TCC for 8 years.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks. Did you already do the thing, the raffle?
Not yet.
Oh, but I talk first now?
I think we do the raffle.
Did we do the raffle now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Hit that button.
No, yeah, you're good.
I'm reminding them to order.
Okay.
Imagine that.
The red button's on it.
That is what they told me earlier. Sorry.
I guess I was thinking it was at the end.
Okay, well, that's up to y'all.
I'm going to get you to come up here and
Okay.
draw it.
Yeah, I can do that.
So there are 5 tomato plants that Kelsey has been growing herself. So if your ticket ends in 5014, 5014, yay.
All right.
Okay, grab another one.
Okay.
$5065. Yay. $5064.
All right. Keep going? Yeah, no. We can't do 6-3 or 6-6. That's not going to work.
No. Uh, 5061.
All right.
How many is that?
I did 3. You took one of them. I
Okay,
think.
one more. We got one more. There's 5. $5068.
Damn.
You can get those after, or she's handing them out right now.
You have to hold it in your lap the entire time. No.
Here you go. Thank you.
All right, so I guess we're going then.
Yeah.
They made me wear this little tracking device. Does it work okay? Yeah, I know, right?
It's for the live.
Okay.
You just have to speak loud.
Okay. Hey everybody, yeah, my name's David. Yeah, like Kim said, I've been with Tarrant County College, the horticulture program, for almost 10 years, I guess this July. And yeah, I kind of have a weird background, I guess you could say, as far as like about half my career has been like organic farming and food production related, and then the other half has been landscaping and irrigation. So, jack of several trades, master of none, you know, right? But anyway, my favorite thing is food crops, vegetables. I guess as far as like, you know, I've been growing vegetables for over 20 years in some capacity, but really like where I got, baptized by fire, so to speak. I was the farm manager for a nonprofit called World Hunger Relief. They're right outside of Waco, a 40-acre training farm. They do sustainable agriculture training. And but we had a 2-acre, vegetable market garden area, grew about, over 30 different types of vegetables. And we did a CSA program. If y'all are familiar with that, it's kind of hard to find around here, like close to the city. I mean, or they got to come in and bring it to you. You got to drive out there. But CSA being community supported agriculture, where, basically you're buying a share of whatever is in season and harvested that week. And so it's kind of like you're committing to a farm, and they're committing to you to plant. But also, the hardcore way would be like people pay all up front for a whole year of pickup. Say like 30 weeks out of the year, you go to the farm and pick up 5 to 7 different vegetables, types of vegetables they harvested that week. But I mean, the hardcore way would be people pay up front, and then if the farmer or something, Mother Nature, weather, you're sharing in the risk. That'd be the hard, you don't see that as much. Like I think the first CSA models, I don't know why I'm talking about CSA, so I'm just talking about it. But yeah, they're like up in New York State. But anyway, it's a really great, and I have some friends that I was there at the farm with. They were interns, and they run a farm in Van, Texas, which is just outside of Tyler, Red Moon Farm, and they do a CSA, and they've been running that for, about 10 years now. So anyway, I was involved in managing that. Plus, there was livestock. We had a grade A raw goat dairy. There was way too many things at this training farm. But made a lot of mistakes and huge, the things I maybe know now are based, it's all, my career is built on a foundation of failure. That's where you learn the most, right? So anyway, enough about me, but so I'm going to talk about fall vegetable production. Kind of just want to talk about, some of y'all are maybe avid seasoned gardeners. Maybe some have tried a few times and had some success, some failure, or all failure, and I can relate. Or you really want to try, but you're kind of like, I don't know where to start. Do I do this right? How much do I water? People tell me not to overwater. People tell me not to underwater. Oh my gosh, you're terrified, right? So I have some slides and pictures. I have way too many slides, which is kind of my thing. I've just accepted it. I'm like, I'm going to make too many slides every presentation. I'm just going to do too many. We won't get there. No. Just my, overly analytical brain or whatever. I can't leave that out. I can't leave that out. And, then, real time happens. I don't have enough time. But anyway, so I have a lot of pictures from, that I've taken or from the college of, I've been teaching horticulture food crops and organic vegetable production and a few other classes since I started. Definitely my favorite class to teach. And campus is being redeveloped. We don't have a good garden space now. It's been very frustrating. I'm working on that, on an area. But anyway, this is before this building behind here with the lean-to greenhouse was demolished about a year and a half ago because they're rebuilding stuff. We still have greenhouses, but anyway, we lost a lot of this kind of somewhat larger garden area I have pictures of. So anyway, talk about fall vegetable garden and kind of the unique things about growing in the fall versus the spring, summer, particularly here in North Texas, right? And then I think I'm going to talk a little bit about ways you potentially, if you wanted to, could start your own transplants for fall. And you don't need a greenhouse. Greenhouses are hot in the summer, okay? Open air with some shade. Open air with some shade, right? And then go through not everything you could grow, but some of the main cool season crops. So I'm not talking about, Susan was like, you're talking about tomatoes tonight, right? I was like, well, crap. No, I didn't know. No. But no, I mean, we can talk about whatever, but, and I've done fall crops of tomatoes. I don't know if y'all have done that. Not just you plant them in the spring, or mid March or as early as you can, avoid and then they kind of look good and produce for a while, and then the dead heat and the rain start and the heat and pests and disease, whatever. And you kind of just trying to get them to hold on for dear life until it cools off a little bit in the fall, and then they flush back out, maybe, if you're lucky. If it's even worth trying to keep them alive and water them through the summer when they're not producing much, cherry tomatoes being an exception, as they're able to fruit in relatively high temperatures, just the small fruited. But yeah, so I've done fall crops of tomatoes in the past, and I just don't do them anymore. It was too much of a gamble, trying to get them in the ground, July, late July, August, and it's hot as, all get out then. And which tomatoes can do heat. It's not, getting them started, a lot of water, and then it's kind of, pardon my French, but bass-ackwards, where they're maturing in the cold weather, the tomatoes. Tomatoes are a warm season, not like hot, obviously. It's not okra. It's not okra. Nothing's like okra, right? Or eggplant even. And even peppers are better. But anyway, but yes, but I've ended up with a lot of green tomatoes, many falls, right? Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Because when it gets cooler, even if it's not like an early freeze, and they're frost sensitive, right? Even if it's not an early freeze, things cool down, and so the growth and the ripening is slower. And so, but I've also had some years where I think it was 2017, maybe y'all could help me, maybe it was 2017, but it was August cooled off a lot. And we had tomatoes that were hanging on for dear life, in the summer, grew them in the spring, in the summer. And man, we got so many tomatoes, and I don't even consider that the fall. That's late summer. We got, just because things cooled off earlier than normal. But so I'm not trying to discourage you if you want to do a fall planting of, and you can definitely still do it now. I mean, this is still June. But I mean, you're kind of asking for, I'm putting my money, if you're planting a tomato now, you're kind of putting your money on keeping it alive and when temperatures, I mean, of course, I'm saying this, and it's been below 90 I know it's gone back and forth. But, when it starts to cool off in September, back and forth a little bit, on average, which averages, I don't even know what that means anymore. What's an average? It doesn't tell me anything sometimes, because everything's so different. But anyway, why did I talk about CSAs and tomatoes? I don't know. It's not even, I haven't even left the title slide, so I need y'all's help. Y'all gotta keep me in line here. No. Okay, yeah, and I'm welcome to, welcome questions and comments and criticisms at any point. So that doesn't bother me one bit. Yeah, so I gave y'all a handout. I know it's hard with the lights, and I don't know if Julia, I can send y'all these slides afterward if y'all care. I don't know. Maybe you need to see the slides first, see if you want them, maybe first. But I don't know. And I this is a mix and match of ones I do for my class. So I will go ahead and apologize to you. There's Latin names of vegetables mixed in here. But I don't give a crap if you know the Latin name of a vegetable. And I tell the students that too. I'm just being nerd, teacher, whatever. So just don't worry about that. It's a cucumber. But, okay, so yeah, what about fall fever? Why don't we have that? Because it's really hot in the late summer, early fall, when we should be, planting and getting ready for a fall garden. Now is a great time to go ahead and start planting. I'm not even saying planting stuff now, but get things ready. If you need to amend your soil, if you need to kind of get things prepped, go ahead and do it now, especially when, of course, we've had pretty consistent rains, up till yesterday, this morning, whatever, but there is y'all know the saying, in times of floods, prepare for drought. In times of drought, prepare for floods. So you can take advantage of doing some bed prep. Now it's hot outside and you wake up early and do it, but when things are not too wet over and over again, like in the spring, it's hard to work your soil in March right before you plant your tomatoes. A lot of times, it depends on your soil. You know, if we're talking the field clay soil that a lot, you know, black clay a lot of us have, not everybody, but anyway. But fall fever, because and the reason, talk about spring fever, right? Everybody gets that when that warms up that first time and sunny day, the mid 70s in March or whenever that happens, everybody gets spring in the garden centers. Everybody's going to garden plant sales, which is great. But don't forget about fall fever, especially for vegetables, especially for cool season vegetables that mature. If they're grown in the fall, yes, you got to start them when it's really hot, August, September, really hot typically. And that's a little tougher, but they mature when things are cooling off. And these are cool season crops. So your root crops like your turnips, your carrots, your beets. The beets I've harvested like in early December after a few freezes, because they're able to tolerate these cool season crops. Are tolerant, not like 25 degrees all of a sudden, but light frost. But guess what plants do in response? Plant tissues in response to colder weather and especially light freezes. They concentrate solutes in their cells to make, just like you, I can't think of the metaphor I was going to say, but basically like, salt or whatever on the road, melting ice, like it will lower the freezing point of the water inside the cells, and so it accumulates solutes and the sugars. So you harvest that carrot, turnip, even broccoli head in late November for Thanksgiving dinner, for Christmas, whatever, however it plays out, you will have way better quality, eating quality and flavor, and even some sweetness on varying levels that you would not have if you grew a spring crop of those things that are maturing in warmer weather. So anyway, yeah, ideal time to grow cool season vegetables. Yeah, late summer, early fall. I mean, I guess if, we're trying to look at positives of it being really hot still and it's hard to start things. Things grow fast. Carrots, y'all know carrots, like they take a while to germinate. Longer than, you seed carrots. It can take up to 2 weeks, maybe a little more in the spring because the soil's still warming up. If you're trying to plant it in late February or March or whatever, seed them, like the soils are still cool and cold from the winter. So things are slower. But if you do it in, September or late September, October, should check your planting calendar. See what I'm telling you. But the soil temperatures are, you don't want them to do it in July. It's going to be too hot. But if you do it as temperatures are starting to cool off, the soil temperatures are a little cooler. And anyway, but overall, things are warmer outside, so everything grows fast. So you have that, I guess you could say, advantage. And then as it cools off, it's already done a lot of the growth, into September, October, November, December, depending on what we're talking about. And you harvest them and eat them in the cold weather. And for cool season crops, for the most part, the best quality is going to be then. They're going to hold in the field more. So lettuce or spinach or broccoli, any of these cool season crops. Have y'all ever grown broccoli or lettuce in the spring? And as it gets warmer outside and if you don't get out there and harvest it then when you should, and you wait and it's warmer outside, the quality gets worse. Or like broccoli, those little tight buds, the beads on the broccoli head you want to look for, they've started to spread apart and they're opening up to yellow flower. That happens fast, right? When they're maturing in warmer weather in the spring, in late spring, early summer, right? That doesn't happen as fast in cool, cold weather. So things hold in the field longer. I'm talking about cool season crops, not stuffed frosted, not tomatoes and all that. This is cool season vegetables. Y'all probably heard the thing, plant your water first, right? Just make sure you got your water set up and you know how you're going to do it. Whether it's by hand, you got a fancy drip system, you got a sprinkler, depending on what, whatever, you just have to, it has to be working properly and user-friendly and fits you and your schedule and your, whatever that means. So, but yeah, on the schedule I gave you guys, I kind of cut out cut and paste some parts of it, but I just tried to highlight the things that in my experience are going to be on the easier end to grow for a fall crop. Yes, you can still do a fall crop of peppers. You need to plant them in August, You can do a fall crop of tomatoes. You need to plant them in July. But, and watermelon, you can do fall melons. I've tried that before. You can. I'm not telling you can't do it, but you're kind of, you're working to you're starting it when it's really hot outside, and then it's going to be maturing in the cold weather. And for warm season vegetables that want to mature, melons, it's hot outside when those things are getting nice and sweet. It's hot, hot and hopefully not rainy, You want those sugars to concentrate, right? So anyway, growing them as a fall crop, not that you can't do it. Every year's different, but it's less, I would say in my experience, less reliably, good yields and good quality. So focusing on the cool season crops, and then some of the warm season that would be frost sensitive, such as snap beans or bush beans. What do we got here? We got cucumber, pumpkin, summer squash and winter squash. Those that I have highlighted, those would all be warm season, so frost sensitive. If y'all have never grown pumpkins or winter squash, you need a big area to do that, so it may not be worth it if you have a small garden. But the whole thing with winter squash is like they're supposed to be, the frost is supposed to kill the vines when you have mature fruit out there, and then you let the fruit sit out there a couple more weeks, and then you harvest the winter squash, and the rind and the skin gets hard, and it cures, and that's why they call it winter squash, because you could potentially store them in a root cellar or a pantry in the dark over the winter. As opposed to summer squash, yellow squash, zucchini, you're not going to put them in your pantry. If you come put them in your pantry, you come back, it's going to be nasty, right? Anyways, that's kind of the difference. And same with pumpkins, same idea too, as far as the edible ones. Okay, some pictures of different stuff we've done for fall gardens. So you can see here's some warm season stuff we did at the college. So here's snap beans here, here's cucumber here. Again, these are things these are direct seeded. We didn't transplant cucumbers. Definitely don't transplant beans. Just direct seed them. They grow fast, especially when you're planting them in August, beginning of September. And it's a race to the clock because you want to get some good harvest off of that while it's still kind of warm outside. Ideally not too hot, but they're going to be sensitive to frost. So depending on the value of the crop, depending on how early it is and what your resources and how much you care or not. You may go out there and try to cover. So if there's a potential killing frost coming up. Now, this row cover is not going to protect 25, 28 degrees, but if it gets down to 30 degrees or 31 or 32 for a while, that would kill these cucumbers or beans. The row cover may protect it. And sometimes you don't have another killing freeze until a month later, so you could have extended your growth of your crop 1 month. Maybe not. It all depends. Okay, these are all from classes and stuff. Brussels sprouts, we've got some radish planted in here. Here's cucumbers we did for the fall, planted on September 1st right there, cucumbers. Obviously a warm season. Here's the broccoli out here. Some other greens. Here's some students on campus. And then we got cucumbers, snap beans, cucumbers. I think we rotated. Okay, so this is something about, and yes, my last name is Cole, and I guess that means like cabbage farmer or something, like the English,
I have a question.
Yes.
Looking at these pictures, your soil looks really good.
Oh, yeah.
And so how long have you been gardening and augmenting this soil?
Yeah. Well, we don't have this area anymore, but when we did, it was there at the college outside the greenhouses when I started working there. There was kind of some cut flower stuff out there, but not much, so I started using it for vegetables. But I always would tell students, but yes, you're right, it was overall really good soil. It'd been heavily amended over years of the...
Did you amend every year?
Maybe not every year, but several times did a large amount of compost and tilled it in.
What kind of soil?
What kind of soil was that? Well, there was some just, the native black clay or whatever that we have mostly out there on campus. But it was pretty, again, like it had already been used, not for vegetables, but for other things. And I could tell, I mean, it was very fluffy and like, you know, it was soil. It wasn't like some artificial mix that had been put in. But yes, and I would tell students, like when we were digging, because we would hand dig out the raised beds and the rows, you know, because we didn't have a tractor there at the time, you know. And, you know, if they complain, I was like, guys, this is not real life. This is easy. Just because the soil was very easy. So yes. But still, I do think, you know, if you're doing a lot, you know, you can build raised bed. This is, you know, I just find things that are sitting around, these bricks were, so we, you know, cheap or free, and make a bed out of it, fill it up with a soil mix, and grow leaf lettuce in rows. So it's solid, and we would just cut it with a knife, and you got that spring mix, you know. Carrots here that harvested on the ground. But yeah, this situation, a lot of this stuff in here, I would say, the soil was in a pretty good place when I started there. That makes a big difference. You're right.
What kind of fertilizer do you use?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of varied on what I could get. I mean, I did everything organic, you know, for the vegetable production, and you know, it was usually depending on the crop, but I usually was mixing, you know, a combination of maybe feather meal, rock phosphate, K-mag, different proportions. You know, depending on what I could get access to and what the crop was. Like if it was a leafy green, I would try to use something with a little higher nitrogen. I would do a ratio that had a higher nitrogen just for the leafy growth. You know, yeah, so I mean, it kind of changed throughout the year based on what I could get, and yeah, but nothing, you know, I think there was that, I haven't seen anymore, the Texas two-step, you know what I'm talking about? It's that organic fertilizer that was available at most places for a while. I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I don't know if they stopped making it. But yeah. So I did want to talk about, so this, you know, as far as starting seeds for fall transplants, if you have any interest, or already doing that, or had an interest, you know, the main thing is like, I don't want people to think they need a greenhouse to do it, especially for the fall, right? Okay. It's really hot in the greenhouse, you know, for one, but, anyway, but, you do need sunlight. You need sunlight, right? After they germinate, you need sunlight. But anyway, if we're talking about, so this is like doing cole crops, so broccoli, collard greens, kale, cauliflower. That's what I did in a bunch of these. I probably did 7 or 8. And I just seeded them, you know, inside. We have these 72 cell trays. You don't have to have that. You can use different things. And, you know, covered them with vermiculite and watered them real good. I put like a piece of just thin paper on the top and watered that just to kind of lock the moisture. And I did this on a Thursday and then just stacked them on a cart in our head house just inside in the dark, you know, the whole weekend. We're off on Fridays in the summer. So it was like, you know, came back Monday and, you know, pulled them off and most of them had started to germinate. Anyway, so, but like, you know, you don't need heating mats in the summer, you know, you don't need, you don't have to have light even for this stage. It's once they come up, then they need to get in the light. So, you know, as far as what you do, you know, and I think everybody could do something, and you can use your own containers or whatever. You could grow your own transplants from home doing something similar. You know, and depending on like, you know, the ideal would be to have like a shade cloth outside, but they can be outside. It's warm outside. They just need, these are cool season vegetables we're trying to start in August, right? So, and greenhouses are hot and greenhouses are expensive. If, you know, most of us don't have, you know, them at home or available. At the college, we got a bunch, right? So that I have that, but most people don't necessarily have that. So even if you can just set up a simple structure and have a piece of shade cloth over it facing south, you know, so you get even light all day, but it's filtered through shade cloth. So maybe the 60% shade cloth, 60%, something like that. And they will love being in the open air. You know, you got to stay on top of the watering, especially when they're small like this, just like you would anywhere. But you could have them outside. Once they pop up, they need to be in the light, right? And you could have them outside. I'm not saying that's super easy for everybody, and you'll do everything perfect, and then some critter will mess it up. What's up?
That was my question. If I put them outside, the squirrels or something gets them all.
Yeah. Yeah, and greenhouses are, sometimes it's like, yeah, let's just keep them in the greenhouse, even though I'd rather have this stuff outside because it's so hot right now. But it keeps it from, it's a protective structure. You could come up with something similar, but yeah, it's hard. And so you should just buy your transplants, or somebody grows a bunch for a group of friends, or I know it's tough. I will show you another way, though, that doesn't get rid of the critter problem, but I'll show you another way. Cool. And you got lights in there that are provide enough light? You can, and I forget that because I'm not in the habit of doing that, but you're totally right. You can have grow lights. You got to have the lights real close to the plants, But yes, that's absolutely what you could do. That's absolutely what you could do, at least to get them started the first 3 weeks, get some good growth on them. Hopefully once they get a little bigger, depending on the pest or the critter or the little kid that's your pest, whatever. A lot of times once they get more mature and they're filling out that container, they're less tender for the rabbits or whoever is out there wanting to get it, but that's a challenge. Anyway, and then, we just built like with cattle panel. You guys use cattle panel, you bend a piece over, and we use T-post, and we just put we had a big old piece of shade cloth. We just put that over the top and had all of our transplants. I think we put them on tables because of rabbits. Same thing, and just had, these are in the open air outside in August. And it's hot outside, right? It's August, but they're getting some filtered sunlight, so it is cooling it. And again, all these are, we got Swiss chard, we got broccoli, cauliflower, collards, kale. I think that's all what we got in here. But these, because of the shade cloth and being, and again, I think they're healthier in the open air than in a greenhouse or even inside. Not that that's horrible. You do what you got to do. But we built this, I think it was like $200 for the cattle panel and the T-posts, and then the little hog nose clips, You got to look in the veterinary section at Tractor Supply for those. Clip them together for a fencing thing. But anyway, yeah. This, talking about hardening off. So if you have transplants and you want to, you don't want to take them out from their protected shade cloth or the inside in the grow lights. Most of y'all know this. Or in a greenhouse, and just plant them right away in the ground, right, for vegetables, or for anything for that matter. So, like in this case, to harden them off, I would either remove the shade cloth so they have full sun for the last week or so before we plant them, or just take them out and put them out on the, we had that nursery space in there with that weed cloth. Just put them on the ground so they get full sun. And so you're slowly acclimating them so they're hardened off, and they use the term hardening off. And, a lot of times that's kind of an issue or something I tell people to look out for, like if you're buying transplants from a garden center. I guess, sometimes you can tell, but if they're real soft, if either they just got there from the grower that grew them out for them, or, they're not trying to harden them off for you ahead of time. That's all. Depending on the crop, depending on the season you're trying to plant it, you may benefit from not planting it out in the full sun, full wind right away. Giving them time to harden off while they're still in the container. Every time you remove them and put them somewhere new, they go through a shock. And they have to adjust. So we try to minimize that by slowly adjusting them, And sometimes you got to do that more than others, it depends. But in the fall, we got cool season vegetables under shade cloth or whatever, and we need to harden them off to get used to the, full wind and full sun. That's hardening off. In the spring, you're kind of getting them used to the colder temperatures at night, and the cooler air because they've been in the warm greenhouse, maybe, right? So you're adjusting to whatever the outdoor is compared to where they were started and kind of initially grown out. But yeah. Usually 1 to 2 weeks. So this is another thing that I've done. And again, I don't know that this is more practical for anybody. I'm all about like just low tech and cheap or free. But if you have garden space, I've done this before, and this is my fall class doing it. But like, you know, the broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, you know, whatever that we're talking about, mostly the cole crops and brassicas. You can probably do mustard greens too. Cool season stuff. We did a nursery bed. So we just got 4 T-posts, a big piece of shade cloth. This is just out in the garden beds. We picked an empty 10-foot section or something like that. And we basically just direct seeded it into the soil. Broccoli seed, cauliflower seed, collards, kale. So it's out there in August, you know, in the ground. It's a little scary, right? But the thing, we're doing the same thing. We just have a piece of shade cloth kind of tarped over it so that it cools it down. They germinate, and they're not just fried by the full August sun or whatever as they're starting off. And then once they, you know, you basically just grow them real close together. And then once they get a certain size, you know, you harden them off. Now, how do you harden them off? They're not in a container, you know. Take the shade cloth off. Now they got full sun. Do that a week before. You're going to dig them up and transplant. But anyway, when you're going to transplant, you just get shovels full and you separate them and you plant them out bare root. It's a little scary. You're like, there's no root ball, there's no soil on this, you know. They can do good, you know. Do it later in the day. Do it when it's cloudy outside. Do it later in the day if you're doing this in August, September. Anyway, here's some other pictures. I mean, you could do a way more aesthetically pleasing and simpler version of this. This is just what we threw up because we had this huge shade cloth to cover the greenhouses I used to use for the summer. And didn't need all of it. See, I got it rolled up here. But anyway, and then 4 T-posts, some twine.
What is the degree of shade cloth?
Yeah, I think like 60%. I think it's 60%. It's kind of the most standard one. You don't. They have all kinds of percentages. 60% is all purpose. That's what I don't. You know, there's reasons maybe to look at other stuff, but you know, you don't need to worry about that. I'd get that's my understanding. Is it 60% or around there? You guys know? Yeah. I mean, that's always like, you know, honestly, like I'd use this a lot, and I never even like checked what it, you know, I just used it because that's what we had. But I know it's 60% or one of those numbers right around there. But somebody else saying something? Huh? Oh yeah, it's just woven. You know, usually it's, you know, plastic or whatever, but it's just woven, and it's just you know, it has space, so I mean, it just filters the sunlight.
Is it like a screen?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. And you don't need, like, we had this big A roll because that's what, you know. And I don't want to go buy a small one, so I'm like, well, we'll just roll it off here, you know, whatever. But yeah, you can just, I mean, it could be a smaller, you would just want to orient it so the stuff growing under it, you know, in the morning and afternoon, the sun isn't going to directly hit all that stuff. The morning wouldn't be a big deal, but the late afternoon, you know, so that's why, like, you want to face this, you know, towards the west sun or southwest. Or you can install it and kind of tilt it or something. You know, I don't know. Yeah. Depending on, yeah. So anyway, and so this is the different garden from a long time before that I did this. And so I'd already hardened them off, so I had shade cloth and T-posts above all this. I was growing broccoli transplants. I probably should have thinned them out. As you can tell, look how many are right there. So anyway, I'm digging them up with a shovel, and then I have a bucket down here with water. And, you know, I probably have more broccoli transplants than I need to transplant out. This is in downtown Dallas, right by the State Fair, this garden area that I was doing back then. But, yeah, basically, like, you know, if they've kind of grown too long together, or maybe I didn't thin them out, and so my transplants, you know, it's just a mound. Instead of just ripping them apart to put one plant in one hole, you know, just dunk them in some water. And just gently kind of pull them apart, you know, just to help. If there's soil, you know, whatever, just separate them. Also, you can have them sitting in water in the shade 20, 30 minutes while you're digging the holes. You know, you want to do this in one motion. You want to dig these up, you know, hydrate them, put them in a bucket of water in the shade, you know, and have the holes ready. Not like you hold these at your house for 2 weeks and then come back and plant. Right, they're bare root. They're bare root. So you go. But you don't have to buy transplants, But it takes, you got to just keep an eye on it and the water and the pests and stuff. Doing it out in the field is wonderful. I feel like the transplants I've grown in the ground as opposed to in containers or cell trays in general, healthier, bigger root system. Now the transplant shock is going to be greater. But, yeah. So this is our class plant. We're digging the holes here. And, I've done a combination of we did some nursery bed bare root transplants and we grew some in cells like the picture I showed. So doing some of both as far as the transplants we do for the fall. This is another picture here. So, you can see, and I know we already looked at some of these same pictures. So this is snap beans. And we had mulched this because we had planted this kind of earlier when it was still really hot, and the cucumbers as well. And then here we got bare root and, container cell transplants with root balls that me and the class planted throughout here. And, this class was in the late afternoon. Perfect time to transplant in August. Some people are like, what's the best time to plant? It depends on the time of year. Sometimes it doesn't matter. You plant when, it's also like the best time to plant is when you have help. So don't underestimate that. But, at the same time, like, some people are like, well, it's in the summer, say August or whatever, we're trying to plant stuff, transplant for fall vegetable production like we're talking about. Well, the morning is the coolest time. That's the best time. The best time for you, not the plant. Right? Because you just put it out in its new home, it's going through shock, and it's got to sit through a whole day of full 100-degree sun. How about you tuck them in the late afternoon, evening, or if you stumble upon out of luck and providence a cloudy day. Yeah, right, yeah. But anyway, it's not like you can't, you plant them when you can, but when I've done larger, and I've done, in the past, like at the farm in Waco, a lot larger than this, man, I don't want a 10%, 20% death rate, that don't make it. So I want to do whatever little things I can, if possible, within realistic, practical measures to increase the chances of success and minimize the shock of, especially a bare root, but even a cell, being out there, put out in the soil, in a new home for the first time. And I, soaked the heck out of them. There ain't no overwatering right here. There's no overwatering unless you just keep coming back every hour, I don't know, for a week, but like, you want to soak these guys, soak them. I'm also big on like a lot of students, and not even trying to do it, like when we dig holes and we do the transplants, right? And we drop them in and then cover it, like smooth it out around there. If we were planting stuff in sub-Saharan Africa, we would want a little crater because it doesn't rain too much there. And we want to capture all that moisture. But we don't want that crater here. You know what I'm talking about? Like a little crater around each plant, just the soil. You don't smooth it out afterward. And people are like, well, I want it to hold water better as it gets. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but when it rains in Texas, gully washer, right? It rains. Don't want to drown them. And I'm not talking about trees and other things. I'm talking about this right here. So, what's up?
That hay-looking stuff?
That's just wheat straw. Yeah, we bought straw bales, and we just use that to mulch. What would be a
good way to amend your soil? Do you have some strategies for that?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to say the same thing that probably everything else you've been told or read or done, incorporating organic matter as deeply as practical. I'd say 6-inch minimum, 12-inch, great.
We have clay soils. We make roofing tiles out of it.
Right. No, I know what you mean. That's all I've ever grown in, really. I've visited people's farms or like and they have like sandy soil, and I'm like, what the? I wouldn't know. I would be horrible, because I'm not used to it. I'm used to the clay like you. So, there's lots of things. There is like they used to call it clay killer or something, like a combination of compost and expanded shale. Like there's some that provide a larger aggregation pore space. Nothing, those are good. Just, I think either all or mostly organic matter. Expanded shale is not organic matter, right? Not carbon. And the best, most typically complete, broken down ahead of time, supposed to be, form of that is compost.
What is expanded shale?
Yeah, it's just, it's like a clay, a mineral that they heat up and pressurize, and it pops up like popcorn. It's just like real big. It's kind of light. It just looks like a gray gravel. It's not. You've probably seen it before. They sell bags of it everywhere too. But it's not like a rock. Like it's an expanded mineral that kind of popped like popcorn, I guess, for lack of a better way to explain it. And it just provides some larger pores in the soil and can help just provide some larger pores for aeration and drainage in a heavy, tight clay soil in particular. I don't think you have to do that. To me, I'd just be like, compost, organic matter, compost. But expanded shale, especially for a small scale, it's also like, and we're trying to grow a market garden or a farm for a business, and we're looking at the dollars and how much does this input cost for us, expanded shale is not affordable on a large scale, but it would definitely be affordable for a small garden area you're trying to amend. To mix that in with I would say compost should be 75 to 85% of what you're adding, but you could also add some of that just to give some more immediate physical, breaking apart the tight structure of it. And
Does it have water retention?
I think it has some. Like maybe a small amount because it is light, like it's expanded. It's not a dense, solid piece of gravel or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's the main benefit is just the larger pores in the soil and just opening up for oxygen. Plants need oxygen too, right? Just like us, they breathe it mostly from their roots. But yeah. Okay, so like I said, don't worry about these nerdy Latin names. It doesn't matter, But anyway, so head lettuce. I want to talk about some different vegetables you could do for fall, and there's a lot more that I'm not talking about, but kind of focused on a few. Anyway, so this is me in the classes, different times, different years. This is me back there. We're planting head lettuce. And the other thing I like about doing my own, transplants is I'm a snob about varieties. I'm a snob. Whatever they have at the garden center, not good enough. I just don't like the variety. I don't know. That's fine a lot of times. But anyway, so I like to order the seed and pick which one I want, and I don't just like go making stuff up and figure it out on my own. If I haven't grown it before and it's a variety or cultivar that's reliable that I know of, I'm going to reference local, regional resources and see what other people that are gardening, farming, and extension, all that, recommend. I'm not going to go just trying some random, pink neon, glow-in-the-dark romaine lettuce that sounds cool. I'm not into novelty stuff. Maybe a little bit, but just a little bit. Do like the bright purple cauliflower. Y'all seen those at the Central Market and that kind of thing before. But we grow a few. They're just hard to grow and they didn't produce well. But it's cool though. It's bright purple. The cauliflower. But
If you were going to be starting a raised bed garden, do you have any opinions about what you're filling it with at the bottom so that you're not just putting all your money into the bottom of the raised bed? And I'm talking like the Vigo gardens or the 3 foot, 2 or 3 foot tall ones.
like a planter box.
Yeah,
It's on the ground.
if you're putting
Don't put solid clear plastic. Yeah, you know that. People do that. I've seen people do that. Yeah. And don't put rocks. You know that. Don't put rocks. No. It does not improve drainage. All it does is take away volume of rooting area for soil to be for your plants to root in. And it actually can create a perched water table where water will, the soil in the root zone higher up above the rock layer at the bottom will actually, the water will stay more saturated in the soil above the rocks than if the soil went all the way down. Same with pots too. Don't need gravel in pots. Nope. Does not improve drainage. There's always going to be exceptions. The only thing I've done is like, say if I had a container, like a pot, a container, and there's only one drainage hole at the bottom, and it's a big pot, and it's like real small. Maybe I'm probably not going to use rocks because that's heavy. I want the pots to be light, you know. But like I might put something coarse, such as gravel or whatever, you know, put a layer, just like the thinnest layer possible at the bottom, just so it's not like when the drainage hole in this big pot, there's just one little one that gets plugged up over time. So I'm just trying to open up the surface area so that when tons of water gets in there, it has somewhere, you know, if that, you know, that won't plug up as easily. Things won't try to all go there. They'll drain, you know, spread out more and then go down. That's the only time. But yeah, I mean, because the way, you know, water moves through soil, and it's going to depend on the type of soil you have we're talking about, but gravity is not the strongest factor. The capillary action is. So, you know, as you guys know, water has both a positive and negative charge. That's why it's a universal solvent. It's not bipolar, dipolar. You know, it's a molecule that has both a positive and negative charge. So it attracts to other things that have an ionic charge, positive or negative, and it also cohesion, so adhesion and then also cohesion. It sticks to itself. So anyway, the main force that moves water through a soil initially is capillary action, independent of gravity. Gravity is not the strongest force until all the pores get saturated, and then gravity will allow that water to continue to drain. So if you create a finite bottom, like on the, you know, you put gravel in the bottom and then put the soil on top, the water is going to move down into the soil area, and it's going to move just as much horizontally as it is down, equally in all directions, because gravity is not the main force. It's capillary action, right? And then once it gets to that boundary layer, like the end of the soil where then it's gravel, it's going to say, you know what, water? Yeah, water. Hey, water. Hey, guess what, guys? Let's go the easiest way. The easiest thing at this point is to keep spreading into dry soil using each other, you know, adhesion, cohesion. So all that to say is that it's not till it gets totally saturated that water will drip down off the bottom of that soil profile, or whatever you want to call it, into the gravel. So you're actually making drainage worse. Sorry.
In a raised bed,
Uh-huh.
is it best to use a granular fertilizer, if you do a fertilizer, crop, or liquid spray?
That's a great question. So yeah, there's you know, so I try to do as much as I can because that's how I was taught, and I kind of am stubborn. I just do things the same way. If I know something works, I'm not going to change it. You know, like, but dry. I rely a lot on dry fertilizers. Obviously, at planting, you know, putting it in the hole here before you put and mix it in the soil a little bit, and then set the transplant on top. So I pre-plant or at planting fertilizer. That's dry fertilizer, and then maybe even come back and side dress after they've grown for 3 or 4 weeks. Sprinkle some dry fertilizer around there as I'm hoeing weeds, and I'll kind of incorporate. I don't want to hoe too deep, you know. But you know there's a lot of manual labor involved in that. Dry fertilizers are cheaper than liquid generally. It's cheaper per pound of nutrient, and you know I think putting dry fertilizer in the ground, in the soil before you seed or in the hole, before you transplant. I mean, that's what I always do. Now, as far as liquid fertilizers, I feel like, and I'm talking about outdoor in the field soil vegetable production, right? We're not talking about hydroponic, nothing like that, right? I think supplementing as much as, with a liquid fertilizer can be great. It can be a great little shot of nutrients quickly. But yeah, they're more expensive, and I try to get it straight into the soil with the dry fertilizers. Definitely at planting and depending on the crop and how long it grows. Maybe supplemental, and that could be a combination of dry or liquid. So I didn't really give you an answer. Well, did I answer? I mean, I think you should do what you want to do. And I think you should, it's not like I would say that there are some things like, let's say, well, here, to me, it just makes sense that I put a handful of fertilizer in below where the plant will be growing at the beginning. Don't have to do, and to me that just makes sense, especially phosphorus. So with the higher fruiting crops, such as tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, maybe you could say okra, that they're gonna produce a lot of fruit, right? They're gonna tend to use more phosphorus and need more phosphorus. Of the 3 numbers on the fertilizer bag, NPK, so P in the middle, phosphorus, they're gonna tend to use more than maybe other crops that don't produce a lot of fruit. So I get rock phosphate, which is like an organic, source of phosphorus. And I might even put, if I'm doing tomatoes or peppers or eggplant or something that's going to be in the ground, hopefully in the spring, all the way through the summer, maybe into the fall, hopefully, I'm going to get a whatever size I calculate. Sometimes it's just, oh yeah, this kind of handful. Yeah, this is what we're doing, and I'm gonna do like a regular balanced fertilizer, but then I'm also gonna put a handful of rock phosphate in that hole too, because phosphorus does not move around much in the soil, so it's hard to get it in after you planted it. I want to make sure that's there, and it doesn't burn. It does not burn. So rock phosphate is just like colloidal rock phosphate. I mean, I think it's like 3% available phosphorus. It's pretty low, 0.30. But like in World War II. And, after the war, and then, a lot of fertilizer production, right, with these factories and the, was it the Haber-Bosch process or whatever? But I mean, that's for nitrogen stuff in particular. Phosphorus, I mean, what they do with making synthetic phosphorus, like superphosphate fertilizer, is they all start with rock phosphorus. And then they add chemicals to it to extract the phosphorus and make it more potent to make like a synthetic phosphorus fertilizer. But rock phosphate is just mined, so it is organic. Yeah. So anyway, lettuce. I do want to talk about lettuce harvesting. This is my class. This is pretty cool. It's like, hey, we were out there and we harvested a bunch of lettuce. If you can do it, I was talking about transplanting when it's hot outside. If you have to transplant something, seeding any time of day, I don't feel like that has to be when it's cloud, right? That's when you're putting a live plant out there and just the shock that goes through. But like as far as harvesting something like lettuce, and maybe everything, but definitely a cool season crop, doing it in the morning is going to be ideal. It's going to have less field heat. So like if you harvest it late in the afternoon, it's had the sun beaming down on the leaves of the lettuce all day. I'm not saying don't wait and pick it right before your dinner and eat it. Heck yes. But I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to bag it and store it, or maybe not eat it right away, and again, some of these things, it's like it's not a big deal if you're just doing a small amount. It's more like, hey, we're having to, if you're a market farm or CSA or whatever, that's a different deal. And those kind of things matter more if you're storing a large amount. But anyway, leaf lettuce. Like I think I show here, I'll show some pictures of that. Leaf lettuce, you can get multiple cuts from versus head lettuce. Head lettuce I normally always transplant. You can direct seed it in the fall, but I usually grow transplants of it, and I don't know that it would do as well with the bare root transplant, like the nursery bed thing or whatever I was showing y'all. The brassicas and the cole crops seem to do pretty well with that, but anyway, I love a combination of some good, I was showing the picture of the romaine, the green forest. That's the one I ordered from Johnny's, the seed, and then we grow them out. You see the little root ball, the little plugs, and we're all planting them. But romaine lettuce, man, in like 50, 60 days, and it's wonderful. And leaf lettuce, obviously it's called that because it doesn't form a big head that's like one cut and you're done, right? Like a romaine or another type of head lettuce is kind of one and done harvest, right? The leaf lettuce, you are cutting it at a more immature stage and multiple, a bunch of different leaves, and then it can regrow multiple times. And you're probably going to be able to get the most out of it by seeding it for a fall. You want to wait until September, you don't want to seed that in 1st of August, lettuce, because the soil's too hot that it won't germinate. Lettuce seed needs to have a little cooler soil. So, mid-September, something like that. But anyway, you can get multiple harvests from it depending on the season. And that's like that spring mix that they, in the clear little tub that's like $6-7 or whatever. You grow that yourself and just cut it right before you eat it or whatever. Talking about, this is that all-star leaf lettuce mix, green forest, just a romaine, but you don't have to use these same varieties. I just get the seed from Johnny's, which they're up in Maine. They're like a really well-known seed supplier for vegetables for like market growers too. Anybody can order from, but the pricing really works out when you need larger quantities. If you just need like 5 seeds, it's a ripoff. It's not, like a little pack. Anyway, heat with lettuce, heat's going to be the big problem. But anyway, if you're, you can start them in somewhat hot weather, right, for a fall garden, but then they're maturing in the cool weather, which again is great for all these cool season crops. I usually intentionally use a little higher nitrogen fertilizer, and that, the liquid fertilizer supplement, especially if it's one that's got the higher first number, the higher nitrogen, or at least, lettuce may be a great one to use a liquid fertilizer on to just get, because it's not in the ground that long, but you can kind of give that quick shot of supplemental nitrogen fertilizer through liquid. I still put some in the ground when I plant. Just always do that, but to supplement, that might be an easy way to do it. Let's see. Okay, so most of you guys got a salad spinner? Yeah. If you grow lettuce, definitely get one if you don't have one. Some of you already do a lot of this. But, so again, harvesting in the morning. So this is leaf lettuce bed. I think we had cut half of this, and then the other half we left, and we're going to cut it 2 days later at the next class. You got to time it for classes. It's hard. But obviously, like as soon as you harvest it, don't just leave it out there in the sun, like get it in the shade and get it inside if you can't, I like to do, like, say, with head lettuce or even leaf lettuce when I'm cutting it with a knife and just flat topping it and it'll regrow. Like if there's any weeds or dead stuff, we have a bushel, our harvest baskets. When I cut a handful of the leaf lettuce, I take a look at it, piece of straw, get them out of there for it, just so I don't bring that inside and have to deal with it in there. Try to get that stuff out. Same with like the head lettuce. Say it's like the full-size romaine. You're so excited you're harvesting it, I will, right after I cut it, right at the soil line, just right at the base, so it looks like a full head, like at the store, right? Maybe some of the outer leaves have more dirt on them, or they're damaged or dead, or, usually older leaves are on the outside of a plant like that. I just, I'm holding it up before I put it in the basket or the bin or whatever, just pop those off. Leave them in the field. Compost, they go back to the soil. So I don't bring that inside. But the big thing is, if you're growing it yourself, don't wash it until you're ready to use it. Don't wash it until right before you want to use it. And use the salad spinner. That's what I do, with the leaf lettuce mix. So like if I'm cutting and we're doing it at the college, we don't wash it. And again, this is just for us, me and the students, right? But we cut it and put it in bags, and then we divide it up. Hey, everybody gets 3/4 pound of spring mix, take home for the weekend, which is wonderful, right? And I was like, and I always just tell them, like, we're not rinsing it now and then bagging it and taking it home. Bag it dry. Leave it dry. And then, if I have a 3/4 pound or 1 pound bag of spring mix, I come home, I put it in the fridge, in the drawer, in a sealed bag, just plastic bag tied up or whatever. And then, say the next few nights, I'm going to be drawing from there to have a fresh lettuce mix that we harvested for dinner for me and my wife and kids, whatever, right? Like, I wash and rinse just the portion I'm eating that night. Leave the rest in there, Because how long does like the spring mix do you get that's, they always brag, triple rinsed? Great. How long does that last in your fridge before it gets kind of nasty, huh?
Couple of days.
Yeah. Maybe 5 to 7 if you're lucky. Maybe it depends. Yeah. Well, they've, and obviously large scale industrial food production, different, but like they've washed that and rinsed it to get the soil off, and they bruise it. Right? Anytime there's a bruise, if it just sits there for a few days, that's the nasty black and blue part. When you try, I'm usually the one, my wife's like, oh, this is bad. And I'm like, hold on a second. And I'm picking out the slimy ones, no, we can still eat this, stuff from the store or whatever, right? But but anyway, that's from handling it. So that's why I'm like, let's handle it the least amount possible until right before we're going to eat it. And it will, in my experience, and I've had other students and other people confirm this, but you bag it dry, the leaf lettuce mix in a nice bag I'm talking about, don't wash it till right before you use it, up to 2 weeks. Because it hasn't been handled, anytime you're rinsing it, even as gentle as I try to be with the, I'll just put it all in the, whatever I want to rinse off that I had harvested and I had in the bag. I want to rinse it off first and, get any dirt or grit that may be hiding on there, whether I can visibly see it or not. I put it in in the salad spinner, fill that thing up with cold water, and I just stick my fingers in there and just kind of agitate it. I'm not trying to destroy it, just to maybe loosen off some of the soil. And then I pull the colander full of lettuce out, and it all drains off, and you see kind of the greenish water, maybe some soil, and I dump that water out, fill it up again, twice, maybe 3 times. And then the last thing I do is I actually use the salad spinner to spin the salad. Then I spin it at the very last thing to get that water off, the excess water, and then you eat it, right? But you just do it right before you eat it. So talk a little bit about carrots. Again, carrots that you can grow for, look at this. Everybody needs one of these on their tractor. I steal the slides that I've already made for like the class, because we talk about small and large scale vegetable production. So yeah, it's kind of funny. But anyway, with carrots, I would definitely recommend using like the shorter varieties, not the gigantic, 2-foot main crop or whatever. Like, especially if you're ordering out a catalog or you're picking seed, you're never going to transplant carrots. You're never going to transplant. You will always direct seed them, okay? But again, in the fall, if you're seeding them, I always reference the planting schedule, and I have multiple I reference. But if you're planting carrots, at least according to these recommendations, September 1st through 30th, okay? So, that's like, well, why can't I do it in August? Well, the days are longer, the sun is hotter, and the soil is warmer, and carrots they can't germinate well in 85-degree soil, right? So you're waiting until the soil temperatures are cooling off. And also, you don't want to wait too long and wait till December to seed carrots. Not that you can't. You can do whatever you want. But it's cold then, and everything's going to be slow. So you're trying to fit it in where the heat starts to subside in early fall and get a bunch of growth on. And then when it gets cold, you want that to be the final, like the harvestable, edible portion is full, filling out to full size or full size at that point. So that's kind of how you're trying to fit it in the fall window. You know, a lot of people that move here from different places around the country, you know, they have one growing season for vegetables. And they grow things through the summer. They grow tomatoes pretty well through the summer. It's a shorter season, but they just have one long season. We basically have spring, early summer, and then it's hot as crap, take a break, and then fall. We have 2 gardening seasons. That's the way to look at it. Yeah, you could grow okra through it. You can grow eggplant. You can grow maybe a few cherry tomatoes. You know, you can. But you know what I'm saying? Like, as far as like growing, you know, really planting a lot and getting crops in, it's kind of concentrated. And there's, you know, concentrated in the spring, summer, and then a couple months of not really planting too much, and then fall. So yeah, use the tops, use the shorter varieties, especially with heavy soil. That's the other thing. Carrots have been hard for me because I've had the black clay soil. All the root crops, you know, if you have a sandier or lighter soil, whether it's just existing, you know, you hopefully could have a lot of success, or maybe more than me and other people with, you know, clay soil, growing root crops such as carrots. You know, it's harder to grow them in tighter soils, but you still can. But again, if you're going to use the Danvers 126 or some of the ones that they won't get gigantic, huge carrots like they can grow up north, or you know, yeah, germination is slow. But again, in the fall, you can probably get them to germinate within a week or so, as opposed to 2 weeks when you're planting them in March and it's still warming up and it's just cool. So yeah, but then you got to water them more, right, when you're getting them going. So it's a little trade-off. You know, biggest thing with carrots and even the lettuce seed too, say when you're direct seeding leaf lettuce, you know, sometimes it's like, man, I've made little rows and it's like, you know, you only need 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch for lettuce seed, carrots, some of the real small seeded stuff. It's really easy to plant it too deep. It's really easy. You know, and I feel like sometimes like planted rows of leaf lettuce, the all-star mix, the spring mix, and it's like it came up kind of spotty. And then I know there was a spot that I was like, you know, I'm holding the big seed pack and, you know, I spill some seed there, and it's just the most gorgeous, solid. No, I didn't plant it, it just fell down. And I might have stepped on it. But I'm trying so hard to get all this to go, you know, and it doesn't work as well. So all that to say is that it doesn't need to be buried deep. And think about, like, if you say you're making a hole, you know, furrow with your hands and you're going to sprinkle seed in there, think about how deep will that little carrot seed be after you pull the soil back over the seed and gently firm it. What's that? Because 1/8 of an, I'll even bring rulers out with students, and for myself too. I'm not above, just like, guys, this is 1/8 of an inch. It's really small. This is 1/4 of an inch. It's really, and I mean, I need it for myself too. Just like, dang, I always, you know, because like when I'm, you know, it's like if I tell them, hey, let's space out holes to plant broccoli 1 foot apart, you know, by the end of the row, they're 2 feet apart. You know, it's easy. It's easy to do that, and kind of misjudge some measurements, especially outside if you're doing something for a larger area or whatever by hand, and just. So I try to have some kind of control in place, not just for students and other people, myself too. Yeah, and man, the carrots you can grow in the fall. And when they mature, and if you've had a few light frosts, a few freezes, you know, because the carrot tops, the leaves, they can handle freeze, maybe a hard freeze too, you know, they're not going to die back. But I mean, and the roots are going to be fine. Roots are going to be fine. The heat's what gets to them when you're growing them in the spring into the summer, right? That's when they start getting bitter and woody and all that if you don't harvest them in time. But in the fall, oh man, that cold weather. And again, the roots, the carrot, the edible part concentrates those sugars in response to the freezing, the light freezes and the cold weather. And so I remember vividly, this is like 2006 or whatever, and my mom had come to visit the farm in Waco, and I think we had carrots we bought at the store, but then we were growing some at the farm, and we harvested some. And I remember I had my mom like, okay, try the carrot from the store. Just regular carrot. It's good. Just like carrots from the store. They're good, right? And then tried the carrot that we'd grown that was harvested after a few free. And I mean, she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea they could taste like, just because it's so sweet. Beets too. Beets are a dessert when you harvest them in the winter. They are a dessert. I love them. Okay, some other, dill, cilantro, and parsley, those are great annual herbs to grow. You can do them in the spring too. A lot of people do that. Or people try to, I want cilantro and peppers and tomatoes all at the same time, right? Salsa, but yeah, you might even have an easier time or get more out of it, I guess, depending, by starting them in the fall. And you can direct seed all these. You don't need, you could transplant them if you wanted to. I would start all these by seed. And you don't need much, right? I don't know if you guys like dill, but cilantro, parsley, cilantro for sure. And again, like, they can handle the cold weather a lot better than they can the summer, the heat in the summer. Y'all know cilantro, like you grow it in the spring, and then it starts like bolting, where it starts to flower, it gets hot, and it tastes weird, horrible. That won't happen in the winter. It won't happen. Things hold in the field longer. Broccoli. So I'm going to go through the cole crops here. So, and we'll talk a little more about them. So broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and collards. If you notice, so I will point this out because I have the nerd Latin name up there. See the Latin name of all of these. You might notice a pattern. Cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and collards, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi. So yeah, that's why they call them cole crops. They're all, they're all the same species, whatever. All the Latin names are what people came up with to describe things, but I do, I should step back, retract that a little bit, because with vegetables, they're all cultivars. They're not like, oh, I found a wild Brussels sprout plant out in my field, and I think there's pretty good evidence to confirm that it all started with cabbage. And then they grew them out, and there was variation. They select, and they ended up with broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, like all those. So anyway, yeah, fall production of broccoli. So this is, I was showing you guys digging up the old nursery bed area. This is in downtown Dallas over there, and this is the broccoli I'd planted. These were all bare root I did over there. But yeah, you can do, growing broccoli. Broccoli is one of the ones that I do every semester with the class, just because it's pretty reliable. I feel like it's easier than cauliflower. It's a cool season crop, so I know that I don't have to freak out if we may have 32 degrees coming up on Halloween or whatever. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes yeah. Probably caterpillars more, maybe, with the cole crops. It depends. It depends how bad it is. Again, in my experience, if I haven't had the aphids take over any of the cole crops that I can remember. Going in, when they're going into the colder weather, it's usually something where they're in a poor draining soil or waterlogged or unhealthy. There's aphids everywhere, right? We're not talking about just a couple on each plant, whatever, right? But, depending on how bad it is with aphids, I always start with a hose nozzle, try to knock them off, just, and then maybe go to soap and water. And it depends. If it gets worse, then I might try, I don't know, neem or something else, another organic one. The the caterpillars have been maybe a bigger issue that I can, remember right now. With the fall vegetable crops, the army worms and the cabbage loopers and different caterpillars that bite holes. When you have holes in the leaves, it's with any of the cole crops, and it's typically, almost always going to be a caterpillar. And they use BT for that, the bacteria that's organic proof. But yeah, so with broccoli, again, I generally think it's easy. It's definitely easier than Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts might be the trickier one to grow of all the cole crops. I love Brussels sprouts. I love eating them. My kids love Brussels sprouts. Love it. But hard to grow here. And you shouldn't try it in the spring. Just try it in the fall if you want to do Brussels sprouts. It's still hard, in my opinion. But there's people that do it successfully around here. But it's not like super common. But yeah, this was 16 years ago. Or no, that can't be. Let me do the math. She's 15 now, so this was over 10 years ago, though, this picture of my daughter, Asha. She's 15 now. So, but anyway, she was probably like 4 or something there. But the harvest, I try to let the primary, you pretty much get that one primary head, right? After you cut that, that's really that's the prize, for the broccoli. Some people are like, oh, is it going to make more big? No. It'll send off the side shoots, smaller little florets, and you can cut them or pop them off by hand. They're wonderful, too. A little more, I really like one cut, and I got a big broccoli head. It's kind of like, cherry tomatoes are great, but man, harvesting takes a long time. I want one tomato, I'm done, instead of, and I eat every other one too. That doesn't help. They're so good, right? But anyway, yeah, and some of the varieties I've used. But anyway, yeah, and for those of y'all that don't know, the broccoli head, it's the flower buds that are all tightly packed together that haven't opened yet, and most of y'all probably know that, or especially in the spring, again, this will hold in the field. Like if I had a broccoli head that's nice and big and could be harvested, ready to harvest, let's say, and it was May, like it was a spring crop, May or possibly even early June, May, I'd be like, I need to get that. I can't wait 2 days. Because it's not going to be so tight, the quality, all that, But if you're growing it into the fall in the cold weather, oh yeah, I'll come back in 2 days. No problem.
How many heads can you get? I know there's broccolini or
Broccoli Rob or something.
How many heads can you get off like a broccoli?
One broccoli plant?
Yeah.
One primary head in the middle, one big one, and then it will produce side shoots on the bottom that are smaller after that.
But it won't be as big as the
No. Sadly, I wish it would. Yeah. So I try to let, I'm always like, I think you get it, I don't want to let it go too long. It's mostly in the spring, right? Hard, but I think it can get bigger, before I cut it, right? Because I want a big old, but it's also like, yeah, those buds look like they're starting to slowly cut it down,
That's gonna take a couple of square feet at least, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends on what variety you grow. Again, like the other thing is like I always use the early maturing varieties. Hence, y'all probably know Blue Wind, Green Magic. They tend to imply fast moving, things or whatever. So they don't get as huge as maybe some other places that grow broccoli plants. But yes, it does. I would space them. I usually would do like 2 rows down a let's say a 4-foot wide raised bed, like the top of this here. I know this is just in the ground. This may not be what everybody has. I understand that, but there's 2 rows going down the length of the bed, and the spacing between, each plant is 1.5 to 2 feet, but then I have 2 rows and they're staggered, so there's like a plant every 1.5, 2 feet. Anyway, but yes, they do get big, but that means there's going to be a big broccoli head on it, hopefully. So I like that, but yes, it does.
I just wanted to add, I think those beautiful broccoli leaves that are there, a lot of people don't know.
Oh yeah. Absolutely, and no, you're totally right. And I mean, would you say that, like, compared to collards or kale, maybe the broccoli leaves after you harvest the broccoli head or whatever are maybe a little tougher, and you just got to cook them the right way?
Yeah, and I don't like the stem.
Yeah, you take the stem out. Yeah, but I mean, looks like collard green. You know, they're all cole crops. They look pretty similar. So yes, absolutely. So cabbage. I don't know how many. I don't know how many of you guys have grown cabbage. A lot of people don't like cabbage anymore. And even though it's my namesake, I hate coleslaw. Like I can still picture like a little kid and be like my grandma, I love to death, was like eating coleslaw. I remember. And like, I don't know if I've ever had coleslaw. I think I've avoided it for 43 years. No, I don't. No, but I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I really don't like coleslaw. That's true. But, crop, coleslaw, cabbage in it, right? And I always, by the way, I don't know if anybody else said this, but for a long time, I thought everybody was saying cold crops. I thought that's what they were all saying for a while. But then I'm like, no, it's my name. Cole, David Cole. So it takes me a while to get stuff, But yeah, I mean, cabbage can be wonderful. And again, if you're not into eating cabbage, but you want to try, it's probably I would say it's probably the easiest, most heat tolerant of the cole crops to grow. That's why cabbage kind of has this staple crop, reputation in the world and, in different ways in cooler areas. But especially if you're growing it for this fall gardening window like we're talking about, and it's maturing in the cold weather. Ooh. If and trust me, I don't hate the coleslaw. Yeah, I don't like that. Cabbage I like. I don't have a problem with that. But anyway, and bacon helps with cabbage too. Little trick, So, yeah, cauliflower. These are some of the ones that I don't know that that's in my picture, but these are ones from we harvested there. There's a little small, and it looks like a broccoli head, right? Comes up in the middle. And definitely with cauliflower, you get one cauliflower head. It doesn't send side shoots up or nothing, even after like broccoli. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a doable crop. I would say it's more difficult than broccoli. That's why, I was like, I grow broccoli every fall. I usually teach food crops in the fall, which I'll be doing again this coming fall at TCC. Always going to do broccoli, always going to do pak choi, always going to do leaf lettuce, always going to do head lettuce, turnips, some other root crop. Anyway. And then I'd switch some other things, collard greens and some other things we do. But yeah, they're going to take a little longer than broccoli typically. But so we're talking about how broccoli. Here's some broccoli next to the cauliflower right here. These are all the unopened flower buds, right? That are all the beads that are all tight, and that's what part of the plant broccoli is. A lot of little kids are freaked out when they see that or realize that, they see broccoli growing. Or if it goes too far and the yellow flowers open up like in the spring, or summer. But cauliflower, it's not like that. It's like a curd. It's like a malformed tissue. Even though it looks like, oh, this is just a white broccoli, like a little kid. Oh, that's just a white broccoli, Dad, No, it's not. I mean, it's not. But I'm not saying that's not stupid to say or whatever, especially like for a kid. I mean, I still think of it as, head of broccoli, head of cauliflower, kind of, they live together in harmony, somewhere. But yeah, like it's actually like, I forget what the technical term is, some kind of like malformed not reproductive structure or flowering growth. But anyway, if you look at cauliflower closely, there's no flower buds. Broccoli closely, each one of those little beads is a flower bud. Cauliflower's not. So it's a malformed, vegetative, some part of the plant growth. But anyway, it tastes good, so we grow it, right? So, the thing with cauliflower is as soon as you see the little cauliflower head coming up and you can see the white, little bitty cauliflower head, you want to blanch it. They talk about that, basically because you don't want sunlight on this once the head starts coming up because it will discolor it and ruin it, make it all brown and black and nasty and, So if direct sunlight goes on it. So all you do is, that's an extra thing. You don't do this with broccoli, of course, but with cauliflower, you wrap the leaves that are closest to the cauliflower head and, usually get a rubber band or something like that, put it around there so it stays covered like this. And then you can kind of see it's poking through the sides and, okay, it's time to harvest and you cut it, and eat it. But you have to blanch them. You just keep the sunlight off of it, and you just do that with the leaves surrounding it. So that's another little step. Kale, kale and collard greens both. Really awesome green. The curly leaf kale, like here, I think I have 3 different varieties in this raised bed we built, of 3 different types of kale. The curly leaf kale is really productive. It's probably the most reliable and just produces the most greens to eat. If you're, the second one, the Toscano, you hear it called dragon tongue, you hear it called lacinato, different names, but it's like the darker, I know I don't have a good, it's this here. It's like a darker green. And it almost is shaped like a long, dragon tongue, that's my favorite to eat. That's my favorite to eat. Just the texture, whatever. But anyway, and you can do different types and mix them all together, and you can harvest them at a baby stage and eat them fresh or in a salad or just saute them barely, or you can let them get full size and cook them up. Some people will separate the stems, cook them separately or not use them or whatever. Different things you can do. But kale is a rather easy vegetable to grow. Now, whether you like kale, that's a whole other thing. A lot of people may not like it. But yeah. So as far in collard greens,
You do tend to like it better after you grow.
oh yeah, that's a great point. That's right. You will try, if you grew it, you will try and potentially enjoy anything that you haven't before. Yes, that's a great point. It does, and that's why it's like school gardens with kids and kids growing up, being around, growing their own food and having an impact and all that. And I remember this was 9 years ago or something. I was. Before I got remarried, 7 years ago, I have 3 teenagers, and now teenagers, and we were eating at some place close to where we live, and we all were eating salads, and so my kids were, 9, 7, and 5, and all of us had a big bowl of salad. I was healthier back then. At a restaurant, and there was 2 different ladies that walked by and said, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen that." The kids eating salad. I didn't do anything special. It's just they liked it, and they were all born in Waco. We were at the farm and we lived on the farm, so they were used to being around it and eating it. So it can. I do think the foods at a young age. Everybody knows this, but it does affect your taste buds and. But anyway. Yeah, collard greens, they're going to be the most heat tolerant. You think of collard greens as iconic with the South. And they are the most heat tolerant. They're more heat tolerant than kale. Yeah, but they're, again, for a fall crop and collard greens, and again, even the kale and the collard greens that we're talking about, they also, after a few light freezes, that flavor concentrates. It's, and again, when you're doing it backwards, where you're starting it in the cooler early spring or whatever, and they're maturing more in the heat, I'm not saying it's ruined or nothing, but the flavor is not going to be the same, and some of the bitterness is going to come out. These are cool season vegetables. So again, we're trying to fit that fall gardening window here, specifically in North Texas. And yes, we got to start stuff in August, September. Still really hot, but that's so that these cool season vegetables can mature in the cold, cooler weather, and that is the best quality you will get any time of year. Brussels sprouts. Try Brussels sprouts. It's hard. They just take a long time. They take a long time. If you want to do them, only do them in the fall. I don't think we don't have a long enough window where it's not real cold and things don't grow that much before the dead of summer hits to do a Brussels sprout crop. I'm sure people have done it, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's my understanding is it's really tough. Even doing one in the fall, we did at the college, they survived the cold. That's no, they're the most cold tolerant of all the different cold crops we're talking about.
When do you take the leaves off?
When do you take them off? When I did it, I was just harvesting the sprouts when they were ready. And if some of the leaves were yellow and nasty or, I would take them off then. But there wasn't any, I wasn't aware, maybe you know more than me. I only tried it one time. So I definitely don't know that much about growing Brussels sprouts.
Because I've seen them like that before, where all the lower leaves are gone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure when to do that. I just did it yesterday, and the Brussels sprouts look great. But
Oh, you got Brussels sprouts now?
yeah, this is my first time, so I didn't know what I was doing. but I hadn't seen the leaves taken off, and then cabbage worms have pretty much eaten all the leaves, so I just went ahead and took them off. But they haven't affected the Brussels sprouts.
Do you have the little sprouts on there, the Brussels sprouts that are forming? Okay, sweet. Well, and
They may be bitter. Maybe it's too late. I'm going to cook.
so we got a pioneer here, so don't listen to me because I'm like, only grow them in the fall.
Like I said, it's my first time, but I had seen other people do it. But that was in Kansas. That wasn't here, so I think they had.
This is your first time doing it here.
This is
You're saying?
first time doing it ever. I just seen up there that they took all the leaves off, and it was just this stalk of Brussels sprouts. And I was like, I didn't even know that's.
Right before they harvested it, or they left it like that in the field before?
The leaves were off, and they left it in the garden, in the community garden, and were waiting for the Brussels sprouts to get bigger. I have some that are like that big around, and
Awesome.
some that are little tiny. So I'm hoping that it doesn't get too hot for them to get bigger without.
Yeah. I know that's my only fear is just as you're wanting them to mature, we're already in June and just, hey, it's been relatively, the rain's one thing, but also like rain means it's cloudy more and kind of cooler relatively. So,
So the leaves I thought were shading the sprouts, but then the cabbage worms ate holes in all the leaves, so it's not really much shade anymore. So I just pull them to the side and they just break right off. You don't have to cut them. But
Yeah.
I have to cut the sprouts off. They don't just
Sure.
break off.
I just don't know anymore. I'm not aware of anything where there's some intentional point you need to or not to remove the leaves. But that doesn't mean.
I'm going to try to start them earlier next year.
Yeah, and
I'm going to try them in the fall again too. So.
awesome. Yeah, you got the touch apparently for this. So yeah, do it. Yeah, I wonder if you try them in the fall as well. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, the cole crops, again, like collards and kale planted in the fall. This is another thing that's interesting too, just getting the most bang for your buck, or however you want to say, is planting that stuff in the fall. It might depend on the winter. But I'd say more often than not, the kale and collards grows planted in the fall, grows all the way through the winter into the next summer and gets hot and maybe exceptions to that, but so they can potentially be out there for a while. Anyway, yeah, I was talking about, we were talking about some of the pests and, cabbage loopers. I like spraying, whether I'm using a, like say BT and, water solution for caterpillars specifically or something else. Or you can just do water and soap, but, for aphids, right? Just dish soap. But, if y'all have noticed, and I use this example in class, and the younger students are like, and I'm like, so you guys, y'all, when you guys have waxed your car, no, but like some people here, y'all have waxed your car, at least had it waxed, and noticed, okay, what happens there? The water beads up on it, right? Because there's that waxy layer. The wax is non-polar. You know how water has both positive and negative? Well, wax don't have either. It's nothing, that's why the water sticks to itself only and not really to and the water beads up, and if there's a slope on your hood, slides right off, right? As like a drop that stays together, It doesn't spread out. There's that surface tension on the water. But anyway, same thing in my experience with spraying broccoli leaves and collards and whatever with water and an insecticide. It just beads up and rolls right off the leaf onto the ground. I'm like, dang it. So, I add some dish soap to it, and that helps break the surface tension of the water. In order to get, like when you don't wax your car and it rains or you put water on it, it doesn't have these beads. The water just splat and spreads out, when there isn't that waxy. But the cole crops and a lot of the brassicas, especially the cole crops, have a rather thick waxy cuticle, the outer layer of their leaf. So, and you'll, just pay attention if you're spraying stuff. Usually people are like, how much dish soap do you add? I go, I don't know, till it stops rolling off. I just keep adding some, mix it in, spray it, a little more. A few drops, and then mix. It depends, you're not with regular dish soap. You're not going to hurt anything. Yes.
What is your solution for if like the temperatures drop really low? Like we got to like 15 this February at some point. You said those coverings don't really work. Those only work like for mostly 30 degrees. What do you do if you have some, like I've kept crops, planted in the fall, these cold crops.
Oh, cool. And they can get hurt by 15 or something. Yeah, you know that.
So what do you say to do for that? Is there anything you can do?
Well, it would, maybe not. Yeah, it depends. I don't know. Make sure they're well watered. Kind of like they say about landscape plants going, say a prayer, happy thought, whatever, I think like, it's still let's say the frost blanket or row cover or whatever you have that you could use if you have it available and could, it's still going to make a difference. But like in the context I was talking about, like using it for, it depends how cold it gets, but it also depends how long it stays that cold, right? And then if there's wind or not, how still the air, there's other things that matter. So like, it still is going to protect it and potentially, essentially like keep it from a few degrees, of cold by covering it. Will that make the difference in that kind of extreme? Also, like, to me, it depends how valuable it is to you, which, that's to each their own on that. To me, I'd be like, man, those collards and kale have had a good life. We ate them well. But it's not wrong to cover. That's totally, because I'd be like, well, I think I'm going to do another spring crop and plant new ones, and they'll have more lush growth. They're not going to be as tall and scratch. I don't know, but that's up to you. But yes, I don't have a better other than row cover, if that's even worth it, which will help insulate a little bit. But row cover can only do so much. It can't. Right. And also, it'd be, I guess you could say in a perfect world, it would not be mulch. So there'd be bare soil so that the sun, if it's sunny the day before, which it never is, and it's always windy when you put out the row cover. As soon as you walk out of your, the wind starts, parachute. You kicking me off? No. Okay.
No, you're still good. We still.
Just a couple minutes. Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we'll wrap it up here and do some more questions and be done here in a little bit. But I don't know. Okay, turnips. Turnips are wonderful. I love turnips. So purple top, white globe. and again, this is the thing that some of the younger students, it's kind of my generation, Super Mario Brothers 2. You pluck up turnips and throw them at the bad guys. Anyway, but yeah, just that classic turnip, right? Purple top, white globe. I mean, you should see that variety. You know, you're doing all these by seed, by the way, if it's a root crop like this, right? Yeah, that's the classic turnip. You can eat the turnip greens. Of course, eat the turnip itself. Yeah, this is some from, sometimes, thinning them out and, you get some weird shapes and stuff, but still good eating. And again, root crops like this growing into the fall. I've already said it too many times, right?
How about parsnips? There's parsnips are going on.
I haven't, I mean, people might do them. I haven't done parsnips.
I mean, they're like carrots.
Yeah.
They look like carrots.
Yeah, and I'm not mentioning daikon radish either. It looks kind of like that. That's a great one to grow. But have you grown parsnips?
No, I've eaten them and they're good.
They are good. Anybody grown parsnips or seen somebody grow them here, like North Texas? I don't know that you can't. I don't know. But and I don't know how long they take. To finish out. Like, I don't know, because they're kind of larger. Makes me think they just don't work well here. But somebody's growing them. You're probably growing parsnips right now, aren't you? Best parsnips in the county. Win first place again. But anyway, there's also some other, some people are like turnips. Again, grow them in the fall and they mature in the cold weather. Definitely good flavor compared to like if you're harvesting turnips later in the summer when it's been hot and they maybe a little woody, maybe not as tender, maybe a little bitterness that maybe people have. That's what they remember about eating turnips as a kid or whatever. I don't know. But you got to cook.
AI says plant it in the fall for a spring harvest in North Texas.
Oh, so that's a long wait. Oh wow, yeah, cool. But anyway, there is this is kind of a Japanese hybrid hakure. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it. My brother and his family live in Tokyo. I should know how to say that, but I don't know. But there's different kinds of turnips they call them salad turnips. So they're for eating raw. In a salad, you don't have to cook. Grab one of these and take a bite out of it. It's not good. It's not good, right? But like the salad, I'm not saying you need to walk around, eating the salad turnip, but they are more tender, they're smaller, and they are potentially for eating raw. So there is a whole group of turnips called salad turnips, different colors and stuff. If you haven't tried that, but you like, or you don't want regular turnips and cooking them, you just don't, but you'd like to grow a root crop like a turnip, something different than a radish to cut up and put in your salad, or whatever. So almost done here. I'm going to keep moving through this. Oh, bok choy. Yeah, so I was pretty proud of this. Came up with the nickname Gateway Green. So, for like people that don't like eating cooked greens, I was like, try some bok choy. Yeah, bok choy is pretty easy to, and then, you start with bok choy and then you know what that leads to. Kale, collard greens, it worse and worse. You just go downhill from there. But yeah, I didn't grow up eating cooked greens. My mom or dad never did that. Whatever. I just not bad, good, whatever. Just didn't. But yeah, I do remember at the farm, like some of the other interns and people there at the farm when I was first there. Like we grew a lot of bok choy and they making stir fry, like homemade peanut sauce, and I was like, I can do this. This is good, And so bok choy is very easy to grow. You can do baby bok choy. This is that old parking lot in downtown Dallas, baby bok choy here. Where you just grow them closer together. You just direct seed them, and you can get them when they're about this big. Usually I wait too long. They're like teenager bok choy, But yeah, they're a little more tender and stuff, and chefs love them. If you're ever trying to sell to a chef or whatever, baby bok choy. Bundle with a rubber band, like 3 little baby heads or whatever. But yeah, bok choy is a really great green to grow. And again, if you didn't grow up or aren't, with cooked greens, but you start gardening, you're like, I want to grow all this stuff and eat, I'm going to eat it. And so, a bok choy is really great, especially for stir fry. It has a celery-like, kind of midrib or stem, absorbs flavors, kind of like celery or whatever. And then the leaf, it's really easy to do stir fry. You can do other things with it, of course. But again, that's why, and I do it every fall with the students because it's just a reliable producer. I can usually go from seed to a full-size head in 60, 70 days. I mean, it depends on the weather and all that. And usually the people will have an experience like me if they didn't grow up eating, like cooked greens. They will, because we grew it in class or because, all right, I've cooked stir fry before. I'll try it, And it's like, okay. And then you go to the harder stuff, the collard greens,
So these class gardens that you're working with students and everything, how are you watering these on a regular basis? Are they, I saw a picture with somebody with.
And that was right after planting, but yes.
Yes, so.
Great question.
Got sprinkler heads, so you have an irrigation system.
Yeah, we would, I don't have any, so drip irrigation. And I don't know if any of the pictures I have really, oh yeah, here you go. Well, we moved them out of the way so we could pitchfork dig up the carrots here. These are turnips here and tomatoes. But yeah, see, you can kind of see it here. This isn't great, but this is the main line. It's just the flexible black poly, and it's going to, there's a pressure reducer and a filter. And this is all stuff you can get off the shelf too. I order it from different places because, whatever. But and it's not that different than if you have just like one little raised bed, you don't need something like this. But we had multiple rows. But anyway, it has the little punch tool. You can just punch a little hole in the poly. And then I buy these little drip tape valves, and you just punch the little thing in there. There's no screwing or gluing or anything like that. And then you can attach drip tape. And so I can open and close the drip tape that goes along the length of the tomato bed. I can open and close, and I can turn the water on, garden hose connected to it, and it feeds all these lengths of drip. I can run it for 4 or 5 hours or whatever. Oh gosh, I can't answer that. I mean, it totally depends. I mean, okay, so usually I got to go to, okay, how much, there's so many variables to that, as you already know. I would say, and it depends on the flow rate you're using and all this stuff, but like with the drip tape I've done in the past, say, this kind of setup for peppers, tomato, whatever, going through the dead of summer, no rain, okay? Twice a week at most. Ideally, if it's heavy soil, holds a lot of water. Not that ideally I want heavy soil, but if it is heavy soil, ideally I can, once they get established, like the peppers and okra and eggplant and maybe tomatoes, once a week for 8 to 12 hours. But it just depends, yeah. It just depends. But really, like this kind of system, and this is drip tape. You buy it in a roll. And it doesn't last for 5 years or anything. So, I mean, this is what larger scale producers do. And so there's lots of different setups that are more for smaller scale. But I do want to say, I know we got to wrap up here in a second. I do want to say, don't let people shame you about using sprinklers and not using drip. No, I mean this playfully. But I use sprinklers too. I mean, I'm all about drip water conservation. Doesn't this event have something to do with water conservation? Dang it. I did it again. No, I'm all about water conservation. You guys know that, of course. And definitely with vegetables, which vegetables need more water than all the landscape plants and whatever other stuff we're talking about. Vegetables, they need more fertilizer, more water. Vegetables do, in general, right? However, yes, I am big, and my class will help set up a drip system like this. But also, you know what? There's been a few times, and I'm not saying don't do drip. It depends on the crop. If I'm growing something through the summer, like it's going to be there through the summer, absolutely, I'm going to set up drip on it, because But also, if I do radishes, and they take 30 days, and it's early spring. It kind of, sort of, sometimes rains in the spring. And so, again, yeah, but I mean, drip, absolutely. But I'm also saying, you know what, especially when you first seed or first transplant and things haven't rooted into the soil in your beds or however your setup is, it's hard, you know, if you're just doing drip tubing or drip tape on the surface, especially with germinating seeds, it's hard. Like, so either hand watering overhead, or I will get an impact sprinkler that, you know, and set that up to just do some initial watering to get things established different times of year. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm all about, of course, water conservation and drip is the way to go to get nice, you know, really to get that water really down deep when you have established vegetables or deeper rooting stuff. So I totally use that all the time. However, I do utilize overhead, you know, hand watering a little bit, usually at planting or, you know, establishment, germination, but I use sprinklers in different windows too. Before I reset up the drip tape on the new beds after we tilled it, you know, there's windows of time I will use a garden hose running to a tripod with a sprinkler. And yeah, so. All right, talked about the bok choy. Okay, I'm about done here. Mustard greens are wonderful too. They're not a cold crop, surprise, and neither are turnips. So we ended up going over there. But you know, and turnips and turnip greens and mustard greens are, you know, pretty similar. You know, mustard, and there's a lot of different types of mustard greens too. If maybe you don't want like the kind of traditional fluffy curled mustard green, which, you know, I'm not great at cooking. I do the same thing over and over again when I cook stuff. You know, I'm boring. And I follow recipes. My wife's like, oh, a little of this, a little of that. I'm like, no, what does it say? We have to do that. I'm scared to. The few times I'm like, you know, it's horrible, you know, whatever. No. But anyway, mustard greens are great. Okay, this is the last one. Radish, if you want just, you know, quick satisfaction, radish are great. And, you know, radish are really great to do, like, even seed them. Like, say you transplant broccoli every 1.5 feet, 2 feet, or whatever. You got space in between for a while. Seed some radish in there. And by the time the canopy of the broccoli, if they're growing well, come together and would shade out the radish, you've already harvested them. You know, intercropping or whatever. I mean, play around with stuff like that where you can do things together in the same space. I don't try to get too cute with that because it's hard to manage different crops. But there's a few things that are really easy. And radish is one of those that's really easy to put in. So there's the traditional spicy, you know, the globe or the round radish. I really love these French, you know, it sounds really fancy, French breakfast radish. The Davignon is the main variety, and you guys have probably seen them that I get, but they're long and cylindrical. There's just a little bit of spiciness, very mild, but they're very tender, and, you know, 21 days. That's, you know, the days to maturity from seeding or whatever, that's like perfect, exact, optimum temperature condition. You know, it's never going to be that. I'm going to give, you know, usually a few more, but still, it's one of the fastest things you can grow, and it's great to fill if you hit your transplants that are farther apart and you want to just seed some radish in between, and you'll harvest them before, you know. The daikon radish, which is kind of a different deal, it has a nickname more in like sustainable ag, and it is the tillage radish. For like no-till, they'll broadcast daikon radish on like vegetable, you know, multiple acres, which sounds weird, but because, and not the same as parsnips or whatever like you were talking about, but this is a special type of radish. It's a brassica, of course. You know, there's like, people make kimchi with it, do ferment, but you can also just cook with it, right? And stir fry as well. But man, even in heavy soil, it will bust through, but it's actually has soil improving qualities, hence the nickname tillage radish in like agricultural, you know, vegetable production, as a cover crop or whatever, because, you know, when it makes that big root, even in heavy soil, it's amazing, because usually the other root crops, they stay real small in heavy soil, but these get big, and they, you know, you pull it out and there's this brand new like for, where it loosened up the soil there, and they're really good eating too. So daikon radish are fun if you haven't tried those to do for the fall. So I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna stop you now.
I will allow you. Yeah, okay, I can stop now. You can go ahead and stop me. Just kidding.